The M4 iPad Pro has now been out for about 6 months, and it has been an interesting journey. I've had times where I've used it a ton, times where I just haven't used it as much as I thought I would, and it has been both great, and I've sometimes went to other iPads. And so I kind of want to talk about my experience over these past 6 months. Is it as good as everybody said it was going to be, and does it really hold up, especially with the unfathomable price of the iPad Pro? So first and foremost, we need to talk about the physical design of this iPad. Now, this iPad is one of those iPads that is a fantastic tablet because it is so thin. I mean, this thing is just absolutely razor thin. I'll see if I can get it on the overhead. I mean, just a micro thinness. That's how thin this thing is, which would, cause some people to worry because they thought that this iPad, once it was in their backpack, once it was in their bag, it was going to bend. Now, there have been times in the past where Apple products have actually bent. Apple, we are on to you, okay? But this time it's not the same. This time, this iPad has had no problems bending. Now, in the back of this iPad, like when I think iFixit did a teardown of this iPad, they have a spine running down the middle, and that spine has worked really well in keeping this thing from having any problems of bending. And so I've had absolutely no issues with this iPad when it comes to the physical design of it. If you can't tell, or if you've not seen it yet, it's got some speakers on the top here. It's got speakers on the bottoms. These speakers do sound good. Now, they do sound a little bit better on the 13-inch model, on the Air model, because the Air model is a little bit thicker. It's just physics. When you have something that's this thin and this light, the sound doesn't have as much room to reverberate within the device, and so it's just not going to sound as good. That being said, you never, ever notice those things when you don't have them one next to the other to compare the difference to. Your ears are just designed by God in a way that they can just adjust to anything. It's really an awesome thing. Now let's talk about the cameras on this device. It has gone away from having multiple cameras, which is a good idea because on an iPad... Excuse you, sir. Next, let's talk about the cameras on this iPad. The cameras, they work fantastically well. However, it is just one camera, a LiDAR sensor. And so for me, that's fine because I just don't use an iPad with a camera all that much. I know there's a lot of people in retail that do this, but in my entire 6 months with this iPad, guess how many times I've used the camera? Not at all. Like, I have not once used the camera on this iPad. I used it 6 months ago to test the camera on this thing. Haven't used it since. Next, let's talk about battery life. Over the last 6 months, the battery life on this device, it's been fantastic. I haven't had any issues with battery life on this thing. I mean, it lasts multiple days. Now, here's one of the crazy things about iPads, and this is one of the reasons why I feel like those who actually use the iPad as their main device, they're kind of brilliant. Granted, we'll talk about the software, it is limited. However, when it comes to battery life, the standby time of an iPad is just astronomical. I mean, it lasts forever and ever and ever. Like, I have set an iPad down because I don't use my iPad like constantly every single day. I'll set it down, come back a few days later, batteries drop like 4%. Okay, so it's like if you're looking for battery life of a device that's gonna last forever, it is an iPad. iPads are amazing for this. And part of the reason they're so amazing is because of the chip inside, how efficient it is. This iPad has the M4 chip. The M4 chip is very powerful. I mean, you can actually edit videos on this thing, you can edit photos on this thing, and it really doesn't like miss a beat at all. And so it's very powerful, but it's also incredibly efficient. The M series chips, ever since the M1 series chip, man, they have just revolutionized efficiency and power in computing. And so like the wattage is really low on this guy, and it just lasts forever, but it is very powerful. Now, with that being said, the actual software on the iPad it's just not a computer replacement. I know there's guys out there, guys like Christopher Lawley, who this is what they do. They work on an iPad all the time. It makes for great content. He's a very smart guy. However, when I use it, I just find it so limited. Like, having a file system, they still have not fixed the file system on it. It's clunky, it doesn't work. It works if you work within that system, but if you're using multiple files in different ways, in different areas, and you're pulling it from one place to another place, it's just too clunky. It doesn't work very well. There's a lot of stuff with iPad OS that they just haven't come all the way to the place where macOS is, and it makes sense, right? Because they're not trying to cannibalize their entire lineup. They want to make sure that they're making money, that they've got two separate businesses with the iPad line and then the MacBook line. And so it just comes down to the fact that they're never going to make this thing a fully featured MacBook-like experience because it just doesn't make sense for them in their business model. And I just don't like doing workarounds for everything. Like, yes, I do know, like I said, Christopher Lawley, guys who have figured out how to do workarounds for absolutely everything there is to find a workaround for, but I just don't want to do that. When I'm working, I just want to get my work done. I don't want this, this device to be my entire life, and I've got to figure out how to make things work and all that kind of stuff. I just want it to work when I want it to work, and the file system, and then there's just a few other different ways that iPad OS just comes up a little bit clunky and a little bit limited. Now, one of the cool things with this iPad is you can plug it into an external monitor, and it does full screen support, and that works awesome. I've used it a few times. Like, I use Ulysses to write a lot. Like, all my stuff I use Ulysses to write with. It is the best writing app by far, so pay for it. It's worth it. And that's not even sponsored, by the way. Okay, but when you plug it in and you use Ulysses on a screen, it works the exact same way that it does on the computer. And so a lot of the external monitor support is actually pretty cool. I wish they brought the external monitor support to the iPad mini. That would have been the perfect device for like mobility. You get to your work, you plug it into a USB-C monitor, it would have worked perfectly. But they don't do that. It's only the M series of chips. So it does work fairly well as a device with an external monitor. And so if you're doing stuff like Google Docs, if you're doing emails, all that kind of stuff, maybe this actually would work pretty well for you. It is, like I said, clunky when you're getting into files, but that's because I work with a lot of video files and photo files. If you're not that kind of person and most of your stuff exists on something like Google Docs and Sheets and Google Drive, like maybe you're going to be fine working with just an iPad. When you need a bigger screen, you plug it right into an external monitor. That might work for you. Now, lastly, 6 months later, is this iPad worth the price of admission, which is like $1,100, $1,200? It is so expensive for a device that is not a full-fledged computer. I don't think the iPad Pro M4 is actually worth it. It's really nice to have that tandem OLED screen. It's really nice to have, the 120 hertz ProMotion display. That is really cool. However, I have used the 13-inch iPad Air quite a bit more than this because my job, I'm a pastor, and so I preach every week. So I preach from the larger screen. It's helpful. And then when I'm on the go, I use my iPad mini. And so this kind of 11-inch design to me, it's really great if you're somebody who's going to have one iPad. However, I just don't know that the price is all the way there. The iPad Air is a fantastic one. Or if you go back to the M2 or the M1 iPad Pros, those things still just freaking rip. Like there's nothing I do on an iPad where I need the power of the chips that are in the iPad. And so if you can get back a generation or two, even 6 months later, I would say that's probably still the route to go. Save your money, buy your wife some flowers, that kind of thing, but it's still a really great iPad. I actually gifted this to my wife. I gave her the keyboard as well. And so she uses it all the time. I don't use it all the time. Let's talk real quick about the keyboard real quick before we finish this video out. This keyboard, man, types great, feels great, sounds great. It's awesome. I love the trackpad support. It works incredibly well for what it is. The only issue with it is the fact that you take something like this micro, little, tiny, thin thing, and then all of a sudden you got a thing that's the size of an entire laptop, and that's a little bit frustrating because the reason you got an iPad was not to have this massive, heavy, chonky boy. It was to have something thin and light. And if I wanted something heavy and chunky, I would go with my 14-inch MacBook Pro. But still, it is still a really useful tool if you are going to go iPad only. But man, that thickness, that weight, that price tag, because it's probably, around $300 for the new Magic Keyboard. That's a lot of money to me. And so it does give you an extra USB-C port, which is awesome. It's got the the regular USB-C port on the actual device. But if you're going to go iPad only, then I would say get this. I don't like the Apple Pencil Pro, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Don't like the Apple Pencil Pro. Come at me, Apple. Don't like it. It's a cool design. It works. I squeeze it, and the things come up too much, and that's frustrating for me. So, if you're an artist, get the Apple Pencil Pro. It will be great for you. I'm not an artist, so I really can't speak to it all that much. Cool pen, cool thing. I don't use it ever. All right, so that's my thoughts on this brand new iPad Pro M4. It's been out for about 6 months. Do I recommend it? For the price, probably not. I would go backwards, in time and buy one of those. If you want to be on the bleeding edge, it is a really, really, really great tablet. I mean, there's almost nothing to complain about with it. It works incredibly well, great battery life, all that kind of stuff. I just don't know with that price tag how I feel about it. How do you feel about it? You tell me in the comments below. How do you feel about the price tag of the iPad Pro? Do you have it? How's it going? How do you feel about it? Like this video if you found it helpful. Sub to the channel. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers before December. Go ahead and do that. I will see y'all in the next one.